Good morning. This is Daily Hebrew Declarations with Daniel Jedediah Cook, and I'm reading the declaration for today, January the 6th, 2021. The three Hebrew letters we're honoring today are Mem, Vav, and Shin. Along with those three living letters, we're also honoring the spirit of understanding, the spirit of wisdom, and the spirit of might. We also want to honor Pastor Elijah Ward here at Gates of Zion in Mobile, Alabama. The declaration today reads this: It is the glory of Yahweh to conceal a thing, or conceal a matter, and the honor of kings to search it out. The addition of things together to create unity. Throughout the path of life, the fire of Shin is the lava bubble that burns all around the righteous. Now, that one sounds kind of funny, but I'll explain that one a little bit more. But I love the analogy there. I love the picture of the lava bubble. But we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. But today's declaration starts out talking about this. It is the glory of Yahweh to conceal a thing, or conceal a matter, and the honor of kings to search it out. Now, we know that scripture. And, we look at that and we know that Yahweh is calling us to this place where he has taken and concealed of himself a place where he wants us to go and look for it. He wants us to go and find it. And so when we look at that in particular, it really kind of goes back to a concept, a Hebrew concept called Zimzum. And Zimzum talks about the place of where Yahweh created in himself the expanse where he created creation. Now, I know some of you, we've always had this concept, at least I have, of there being a separation, that Yahweh had completed something completely apart from himself, and never really took the time to understand, is there another way that Yahweh could have done that? Because as I was a kid growing up, that's the way I understood it. But then I found out about the concept of Zimzum. And it spoke about the place of creation and how Yahweh took a veil and veiled off a place of himself. So the way he showed it to me was like a garment, and he spiraled that garment. And in doing so, he placed it over the expanse of himself and veiled off a place in himself where he then took out of the intent of his heart a little photon. That one little photon, science says was negative 10 to the 23rd power. And he took that little photon and placed it into the center of that garment that he had just now placed over the expanse of himself. And with the wind of his breath and the power of his word, he spoke that little dot into existence. And when it did, it began to grow. It began to inflate. It began to become larger and larger and larger. And see, science, I'm really mixing both scripture and the current science perspective of looking at this, because it's number one, science is beginning to prove that through mathematics that this inflation theory is correct. But not only that, it was written in scripture long before that, because in that place where the creation, that little tiny dot began to expand, then our galaxy, our Earth, the planets in our solar system, the planets and the stars in the observable universe, and those that are beyond the observable universe, were all created from that one little tiny dot. Now, just to make you think a little bit, what if that one little tiny dot was this very same thing when Yahweh said, I have given each one of you a measure of faith? What if that one little tiny dot is exactly what he placed inside of your spirit, and it began to expand and grow as we began to see that one little tiny dot, or that measure of faith, really contained everything that Yahweh had intended it for to have from the very beginning? You see what I mean? You see, I believe that one little tiny dot, that measure of faith, is the very creation that Yahweh spoke into us. And just as that one little tiny dot that he placed in the expanse of himself that created our universe and our galaxy is also the same thing that he gave inside of us. He has already given us all things that pertain unto life and godliness. Now, guess what? It's our chance to go in and find that. It's our chance. It's the glory of Yahweh to conceal a matter and the honor of kings to search it out. Now, I'm getting a little bit deeper than I normally do on a podcast, but that's okay, Because, the question remains then, well, what about this veil that Yahweh used to cover himself, or if you will, veil off his light, and then he placed creation inside of it? Well, now wait a minute. I do happen to remember a time when Yeshua, his only begotten son, came and he says, I will die for the sins of the world. And in doing so, what he did was the moment that he died on the cross, what happened to the veil inside of the temple? It was rent in two, right? That veil completely disappeared. That veil, now we had access into, if you will, into the Holy of Holies. I believe that there was more than just that one veil that was rent in two, because the veil that covered Yahweh was also removed at that same time. Then you're like, wait a minute, now how can that be so? How can we still feel like there is a veil? Well, there is. The only veils that remain, though, are the veils that we placed up. The veils that we put into place that says, oh, Yahweh, but you can't work and operate that way, because that's not the way that I was told that you operate. Is that what he's really saying to us? No. We put up these veils, we put up these religious things that say, okay, it has to only come this particular way, and it has to be said this particular way, and that sort of thing. Well, no, wait. That's not the case. So Yahweh is teaching us. This is the place of where, as sons, we're rising up as kings, because he's teaching us to tear down these veils, to rent these veils that we placed up. And as we do, we begin to see more and more and more. Matter of fact, I kind of got a new revelation about the whole 30, 60, 100-fold, because I began to see it as the place of, the more that I tear down these veils, I begin to see 30% more of what Yahweh has already placed there. I begin to see 60% more of what Yahweh has already placed there. I begin to see all of what Yahweh has already placed. But yet there's still even more beyond even what I see with my own eyes. Are you willing to look beyond? You see, it's the addition of things together to create unity. Now, what does that mean? You see, when we talk about this, today's been a kind of a science-y type of a podcast today, but that's okay, because I want to talk a little bit about the quantum realm with that statement right there, the addition of things together to create unity. You see, when we look at the place of the quantum realm, we know that the molecules and the atoms that operate in that arena behave differently than they do from the arena of the cosmos itself. That was one of the things that Einstein had such a hard time with, was because he could not correlate how that the universe couldn't have a particular law that operated throughout everything. And because by looking into the quantum realm, and he looked into that, matter of fact, what he talked about it was called spooky action at a distance. All right, and this is part of where his special relativity came from, because he noticed that there was something super special about these molecules and the way that the quantum world itself began to operate. But see, when you look at the quantum realm, you see each one little dot which has the capacity to complete something, the capacity to do something. And in that molecule can operate and do and complete things seemingly out of nothing. Now, wait a minute. We just got talking about the dot that Yahweh had given each one of us. That dot, that measure of faith, the Hebrew word emunah, and which is the Hebrew word for faith. And so when he gave that to us, then, it's the same sort of thing. He's given us everything that we need to be able to then create. Remember, we are co-creators in him. And in that place, Yahweh has given us the path of life to be able to take the quantum realm, put it together. You see, the one key thing about the quantum realm is this, that when you take all of the different parts and put them together, they are far greater as a whole than they were. The sum is greater than the parts itself. You see, that's who we are as the one new man. And this is the place that Yahweh has protected us. He's given us the fire of Shin, the lava bubble that burns all around the righteous. It's a place of protection. It's a place of covering. It's a place of where we're not being burned by the bubble. No, that bubble wraps around us, and we're protected in the righteousness and the fire of Yahweh Almighty.